today's share for so many things. I'm going to dedicate in memory of my grandmother, whose yahrzeit is in Iyar, but I always associate it with Shavuot because the year that she died was my last year of university, and I had to be invigilated because of her shiva. In the middle of her shiva, I had to go away to be invigilated for an exam, and it's sort of like it was all mixed up with, and it was over Shavuot. So I always associate her ptira with Shavuot, and that's when I remember. And of course, I'm always too late to wish my mother Chayim Arukim, and she always forgives me. I just wanted to this year dedicate the shiur לזכרה של מלכה בת יצחק, Molly Corman, who gave me my name, and who partly built who I am, and for whom I was always the princess and the oldest granddaughter, and I could do no wrong. And it's very important to have somebody in your life for whom you can do no wrong, and who you're always the best of the best. So I'm very grateful for that. And I also want to dedicate our learning in memory of a cousin of mine who passed away this week, Leonie Littman, Leonie bat Sara, and to be Leilui Nishmata. And for a refuah, for all the people who need refuah, the people we know and the people we don't know. And Be'ezrat Hashem, all of this strange period should soon be, Be'ezrat Hashem should be behind us, and we should come out through Chag Matan Torah to a better and brighter kiyum. So, having said that, I would like to go back in this week's shiur. Everyone can hear me? Is it okay? Is the volume okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to share our this week's sheet, and I am very disappointed that I made a PowerPoint and can't find it, but ma la'asot. And what I wanted to look at today is the first Tikkun Leil Shavuot that we know of. And the roots of
Alisa, please mute everybody.
Bennett, stop screaming.
Can everybody see the screen? Yeah. The roots of
Wait, Sarah Joe, wait 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay. The root of the minhag of staying up all night for Shavuot has two directions. One is the stories that we hear from the Midrash in childhood, that Moshe had a problem bringing Am Yisrael to Matan Torah. It's reflected in the text of Sefer Shmot, of Parshat Vayetchanan, of Parshat Yitro, when the mountain is thundering, there's thunder and lightning on the mountain, the earth is shaking, and Am Yisrael don't want to go anywhere near the mountain, and the text shows us how Moshe almost has to drag them out from the camp to approach Har Sinai. And the Midrash takes that description a stage further. Hi, Judy. That takes that description a stage further and tells us that Am Yisrael wouldn't wake up in the morning, on the morning of Matan Torah, and Moshe had to go and literally wake them up and drag them to the foot of Har Sinai to hear the voice of God. And this theme of sleeping and awakening is going to be a very, very strong theme in the text that we'll see, which talk about Tikkun Leil Shavuot. So that's in the Midrash of Shmot Rabbah. and I didn't bring it here on your sheets, but there is another explanation which appears in the Zohar, which describes how the tradition of receiving the Torah is re-echoed within our mystical tradition in the time of Churban, after Churban Abayit, in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So this is a description of how the first Mekubalim, how the early Mekubalim, the Zohar is describing the Chabura, the mystic circle of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Talmidim, how they receive the mystic, how the transition of the revelation of the mystic tradition is continued every Shavuot. So Shavuot is not just Zman Matan Toratenu for Torah Shebichtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's and Torah Tanistar. So the Mekubalim, in the same way that, or the Mekubalim take the tradition that to avoid sleeping and not awakening for Matan Torah, to avoid almost missing Matan Torah, which is what happened to Am Yisrael, according to the Midrashic tradition, on that first occasion, everybody stays up at night, so that you're theoretically, right, and we're those of us who remember, and I did it last year. Last year was an amazing Tikkun Leil Shavuot for me. I was in Yerushalayim, and we ran a Tikkun Leil in English for Skula in the Begin Center. And at the end of the Tikkun Leil, after Shani, bless her, finished teaching at 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody who wanted walked to the Kotel, together with everybody else who walks to the Kotel. And I haven't been at the Kotel. I haven't been at the Kotel for years and years for Shavuot davening at the break of day. And immediately after Tefillah finished, they opened. That was the time that Har HaBayit always opens. And I went. I prepared on Erev Shavuot before Shabbat, which was the day before Shavuot. And I went up on Har HaBayit for immediately after Shacharit, and you could hear Hallel being sung in the next to the gate of Har HaBayit from the outside of the Hall, but it was almost as if you could hear Hallel on the Hall, and it was such an incredible, such a strong experience of staying up all night to receive the Torah, hearing Kriyat Torah in the morning, next to the Kotel, and then going up on Har HaBayit and hearing Hallel as other people were davening, sort of brought all of Shavuot together for me. Anyway, so this tradition of staying up all night, it doesn't tend to make us very awake when we hear Aseret HaDibrot in the Tefillah of Shavuot in the morning. But that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be you don't fall asleep because you've stayed up all night. How people manage to do that? Well, they must have had a very, not only great stamina, but great inspiration from the learning of Tikkun Leil. And the Zohar describes how this minhag was performed by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And remember that this is happening after Churban Bayit Sheni. So it's there's an intensity of continuing a closeness, a connection between Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu at a time when it feels like the connection has been broken. Okay, let's see. So this is from the beginning of the Zohar. Zohar Chelek Aleph Amud Chet. Rabbi Shimon haya yoshev ועוסק בתורה בלילה. You with me on the sheet? שהכלה מתחברת עם בעלה. The translation that you can see underneath is from Yeshayahu Tishbi, translated by David Goldstein. Rabbi Shimon would sit and study Torah all night on the night when the bride was about to be united with her husband. And the mystic tradition, in the mystic tradition, that's a description of Leil, of Matan Torah. Who is the bride? The bride is Am Yisrael, the Shechina, and the husband is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And when are they united? In the moment when God passes the Torah to Am Yisrael, which is Chag HaShavuot. And this is the description of what they would do. כל החברים של בני היכל הכלה, all the members of the palace of the bride, which is the description of the companions of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, חכמי הקבלה, צריכים באותו לילה שהכלה מזומנת להיות למחרת היום בתוך החופה עם בעלה, להיות עמה כל אותו לילה, ולשמוח עמה בתיקוניה שהיא נתקנת. So this is a description of how the Bnei HaChabura, it's like the friends of the Kala spending the whole morning with her as she prepares for her wedding. It's the cosmetician, it's the hairdresser, it's the dressmaker. All the different pieces have to be put together so that the Kala will be as beautiful as she can possibly be, liyom chatunata. But instead of this happening in the Zohar, on the morning of the wedding, the wedding is going to be in the morning, and all the preparations go on all through the night. And the Bnei HaChabura, the Chachamim, whose learning is the decorations, the adornments of the Kala, have to be with her, have to stay awake all that night. Essentially, it's parallel to the Kohen Gadol staying up all night in the Mikdash, Erev Yom Kippur, so as to be ready with no problems to go into the Kodesh Kodashim the next morning. So how do they adorn her? How do they stay with her? How do they prepare her? La'asok b'Torah. So they have to study Torah. That's how you adorn the Kala. That's how you adorn Am Yisrael for the meeting with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And miTorah laNevi'im. And they progress in their learning. It's like climbing a ladder. miTorah, from the Torah shebichtav, laNevi'im, to the prophecies. u'miNevi'im laKtuvim, and from the prophets to the writings, or the midrashot shel psukim u'v'razei hachokma. And now they go from the midrashic interpretations of the verses into the mystical interpretations of the psukim. Mishum she'ela hem tikkuneha v'tachshiteha. For these are the adornments and the finery of the bride. So the Zohar is describing how the learning of the mystical teachings by the Mekubalim on Leil Shavuot is the preparation of Am Yisrael for that moment of Ichud and Yichud, the moment of the wedding between Am Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's a beautiful description, but we have no historical stories of anybody actually observing this minhag until much, much later. 1500 years later, after another destruction, after Gerush Sfarad, which is, if we imagine, let's take us away from the source sheet for a minute. If you imagine that the learning of Kabbalah is the center of learning of Kabbalah in the Middle Ages, is in Spain, and the Zohar is written down in Spain. Whether it's I'm not going into the research questions of to what extent Rabbi Moshe de Leon was the author of the Zohar, and to what extent he was a redactor in the same way as Rabbi, which is the way modern scholars in Professor Liebes and his Talmidim look at it nowadays, that this is in the same way that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi wrote down the oral tradition of the Mishnah after Gzerot Adrianus, after Mered Bar Kochva, after the almost total destruction of the community in Eretz Israel. In the same way, there is a sense in Spain in the 13th century that things are, as Christianity becomes more of a threat and more of an oppressive power over the communities of Spain, which are the strongest communities in Europe. There is a sense that the mystic tradition could be lost in the same way that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi felt that there was a need to write down the Mishnah so that the oral tradition of Torah Shebaal Peh wouldn't be lost. And Rabbi Moshe de Leon writes down the Zohar, and from then on, there is a written mystic tradition as well as an oral one. After Gerush Sfarad, that tradition, which has been a hidden tradition, has a sudden renaissance in the Ottoman Empire, when after the Ottoman Empire conquers Eretz Israel, and Tzfat becomes a center of commerce and Jewish learning, and Chachamim from all over the Jewish world come together in Tzfat, and one of those is two of those are Rabbi Yosef Karo and Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz. But they come to Tzfat only late in life, and they come as the result, it would seem, of an inspirational Tikkun Leil, which they recreated as scholars in their prime of their life, not in Eretz Israel, but in Galut, in Salonika. And the description of the night that they created on a Leil Shavuot in Salonika in 1533 was recorded by Rav Shlomo Alkabetz and written down by the Rav Shlomo Halevi Horowitz, the Shlach HaKadosh, in his, we'll see in a second, let's share screen, come back to the source sheet. In his book Shnei Luchot HaBrit, Rabbi Yeshayahu Horowitz, here on the night of 6 Sivan, Shavuot. Hey, do you know that in this year, what's the date of Shavuot this year? No, it's May 29th. It's not the same day. but it's nearly the same date coming together. On May 30th, in 1533 in Salonika, on Leil Shavuot, Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz heard a mystical voice speak from the mouth of his fellow Kabbalist, Rabbi Yosef Karo. And he wrote his recollection of the experience was included by Rabbi Yeshayahu Horowitz in his book Shnei Luchot HaBrit, which is known usually by the abbreviation Ashla Kadosh. The description was translated by Louis Jacobs in a book he called included in a book he called Jewish Mystical Testimonies, and it's a very good translation. So I'm going to use the translation for part of it, and part of it we'll see inside. 1 second. I wonder, can I do this? I think I can. It doesn't need to be there. So this is the Louis Jacobs translation. And before we look at this, I just want to tell you a couple of things. Set the scene a little bit, and take us to Salonika in the 1530s. The city of Salonika is in Greece, on the side of Greece which turns towards Europe. So it was the gateway for the ships which left Spain after from Gerush Sfarad, and one of the few places where the Jews expelled from Spain were welcomed was the Ottoman Empire. And the port of Salonika is the point of entry for ships coming from Spain across the Mediterranean. This is where their first point of entry into the Ottoman Empire is. And many of those who arrived in Salonika stayed. And in the beginning of this period, in the beginning of the 16th century, the Jewish population of Salonika grows exponentially until it's a city with a majority of Jews. There are more Jews than any other ethnic group at this point of time in the port of Salonika, and it's, I think, unique in that sense. Of all cities in the world throughout the Middle Ages, since basically the Khurban, this is the only city in the world where the majority of the population are Jews. Not the majority of the population, but the biggest. Yes, Peter, you're reminding me that this share is based on an article which appeared in this copy of Skula 51, which we published a few months ago, and it was there was a description of in that magazine of the growth of the population, of the Jewish population of Salonika. It also becomes not just a center of Jews, but a center of Jewish learning, and a center for the renaissance of the mystic tradition. This is where the Mekubalim gather. There are a number of mystic circles. One of the mystical figures who come to Salonika is Shlomo Molcho, the Mashiach Sheker, the false Messiah, who believed that he could bring Geula after Gerush Sfarad, 50 years after Gerush Sfarad. He came to Salonika to print a book of his Perushim, and he became part of this circle of Mekubalim there. And after he left Salonika to try and develop his these plans for Milchemet Gog uMagog, a war between Christian Europe and the Muslim Ottoman Empire. And he fell into the hands of, well, he actually delivered himself into the hands of Charles III, the Holy Roman Emperor, and ended up being burnt at the stake in Germany. Thank you, Netta. The effect on his companions who were left behind in Salonika was a tremendous mashber, a tremendous crisis, spiritual crisis. And it would seem the Tikkun Leil that we're about to put ourselves into was after the martyrdom of Shlomo Molcho. And the news of it came back to Salonika. And that year, Rav Yosef Karo, who would later be the author of the Shulchan Aruch, but at this stage is part of the circle of Mekubalim in Salonika. And Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, who was also part of his circle, made an attempt to recreate the description of the Tikkun Leil from the Zohar, which describes Rabbi Shimon learning all night and preparing Am Yisrael to be reunited with God on the morning of Shavuot. So this is the description of what happened that night in Salonika. Know that the saint, right, the Kadosh, it says this is written by Rav Shlomo Alkabetz. So when he says the Kadosh, he means Rabbi Yosef Karo. Know that the saint and I, his and your humble servant, let's make this one page. Zoom. Know that the saint and I, his and your humble servant, belonging to our company, agreed to stay up all night in order to banish sleep from our eyes on Shavuot, right? They're part of this tradition of trying not to miss the moment when heaven and earth come together in the beginning of Shavuot, in the morning of Shavuot. We succeeded, thank God, so that as you will hear, we cease not from study for even a moment. And then he goes on to describe the seder of their limud, that they started off exactly as the Zohar describes, learning Torah and going on to Nevi'im and Ketuvim, and then they start learning the Mishnah. All this we did in dread and awe, quite unbelievable melody and tunefulness. Right? Their limud is not just iyun, it's not just an intellectual engagement. It's also an experience of the neshama as well as the intellect. There's they sing the verses that they learn. They sing the mishnayot. It's an experience of unbelievable melody and tunefulness. We studied the whole of the orders Zra'im in the Mishnah, and then we studied in the way of truth, by which Rav Shlomo Alkabetz means they studied Kabbalah. No sooner had we studied 2 tractates of the Mishnah than our Creator smote us so that we heard a voice speaking out of the mouth of the saint. May his light shine. So they're in a mystic experience. Rav Shlomo Alkabetz suddenly begins to speak, not with his own voice, but with another voice. And this is something which seems to have happened to Rav Yosef Karo a number of times, and he wrote down the teachings that he heard from this teacher whom he called the Magid, and the book that he wrote of these teachings he called the Magid Meisharim. And for a long time it was thought that the book wasn't only attributed to Rabbi Yosef Karo, and recently the manuscript has been found, and there's evidence that it really was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, which he saw as the dictates of the angelic teacher, the spiritual, the result of this intense spiritual experience through which he speaks in a voice which is not his own. It was a loud voice with letters clearly enunciated. All the companions heard the voice, but were unable to understand what was said. It was an exceedingly pleasant voice, becoming increasingly strong. We all fell upon our faces, and none of us had any spirit left in him because of our great dread and awe. And now we're going to look at part of what this voice speaking to Rabbi Yosef Karo said. Ve'ashrechem, ve'ashrei yoladetchem. Happy are you and happy are those who bought you, Yididai, my friends. Asher nadadtem sheinam enechem. For by denying yourselves sleep. V'al yedechem nit'aleti halayla hazeh. By your learning on this night, I, the Shekhinah, have been lifted up. V'al yedei hachaverim asher ba'ir hagdola, ir v'em b'Yisrael. By you, Rav Yosef Karo, Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, and your companions in this great city, ir v'em b'Yisrael, a city and mother of Israel, a mother city in Israel, that's the city of Salonika. You're not like those who sleep on beds of ivory. A sleep which is a 60th of death. Spread out on their couches. But you, abatem nidbaktem ba'Hashem v'hu sameach b'chem. But you have cleaved to your Creator, and He rejoices in you. So this is a description of the awakening of the soul on Leil Shavuot, but not just individual souls, the souls of all of Am Yisrael. Is described as the awakening of the Shekhinah, the raising up of the Shekhinah from, or in a second, the Shekhinah will describe its position before this night. And we'll see where that elevation is supposed to take Am Yisrael. You would think it would be to an intensification of the intellectual connection, the mystic connection between these scholars and Shekhinah, and an experience of an intense spiritual experience of unity with God. But you will see that in fact it will go in another direction. Ve'ilu hayitem misha'arim. If only you knew, אחד מאלף אלפי אלפים ורוב ריבי רבבות מהצער, אשר אני שרויה בו. The Shekhinah goes on to say, if you could know even 1,000th of 1,000th, 1/10,000th of 10,000th of the pain which I experience, לא הייתה נכנסת שמחה בלבכם, ולא שחוק בפיכם, בזוכרכם. You would never be happy again. Happiness would never again enter your hearts. Laughter would never again play upon your lips. When you remembered, כי בסיבתכם אני מושלכת בעפר. If you constantly remembered, if you constantly had in your consciousness the fact that why am I, the Shekhinah, groveling in the dust? Because of the sins of Am Yisrael. Ashrechem banai, be happy, my sons. Shivu el limudchem. Go back to your learning. Ve'al tafsiku l'rega. Don't stop for a moment. Ve'alu le'eretz Yisrael. Go up. Like the Shekhinah spoke about being lifted up. Nit aleti halayla hazeh. And now she tells the circle of Mekubalim, Alu le'eretz Yisrael. Don't stay in this mother city of Salonika of Galut. Go to Eretz Yisrael. Ki lo kol ha'itim shavot. Not all moments are equal. Not all times are the same. Ve'en ma'atzor lehoshia, berav or b'miut. There's no hindrance till salvation, be it much or little. If you can seize the moment, right? Matan Torah is about seizing the moment, not sleeping through it. Stay up all night so that you can catch the moment. And the Shekhinah says to them, in the same way, this is a historic moment. Eretz Yisrael is now available. It's part of the same empire in which you live. There is nothing to stop you from getting up and going. Go to Eretz Yisrael. לכן, כי טוב הארץ העליונה תאכלו. Sorry, ועיניכם, where was I? We were here. ועלו לארץ ישראל, כי לא כל העתים שוות, ואין מצור להושיע ברוב ובמעט. There's nothing to stop you. ועיניכם אל תחוס על כליכם. Don't think of your worldly goods. Don't think, how do I sell off what I have, my shop in Salonika, my parnasa, what do I do about it? Ki tov haaretz ha'elyona tochlu. Put it all aside. You're going to eat the delights of the higher land, of Eretz Yisrael. Ve'im tovu ushmatem tov haaretz hahu tochlu. If you will but hearken, you'll eat the goodness of that land. Lechu umaharu ve'alu. So make haste and go. Ki ani hamefarneset lachem, ve'ani afarneschem. I sustain you here, and I will sustain you there. Ve'atem shalom. There will be peace to you. Uvatechem shalom, and all that you have will be at peace. V'chol asher lachem shalom. You and all that is yours will have peace. That happened on the first night of Shavuot. They're in Galut, so they have 2 days of Shavuot, and so they go that night. The next day they have Chag, and the next night they prepare to hold a second Tikkun Leil. And this is the description of the second night. After the first night, all these things that we hear with our own ears and much more of a like nature, all matters of wisdom and great promise. We all broke into tears at the great joy we had experienced. And when we heard of the anguish of the Shekhinah because of our sins, her voice like that of an invalid in her entreaties, we took courage so that our mouths did not cease from study and joy and dread until daybreak. In the morning, we immersed ourselves as we had done on the previous 2 days, and prepared for the second Tikkun Leil. We girded our loins to repeat the program of the first night on the second, in great rejoicing that we were 10 in number, because on the first night, they were less than a minyan, and the Shekhinah had told them, if only you were 10. So the second night, they managed to bring 10 Mekubalim into the circle. No sooner did we begin to read the portion in Dvarim of Shema Yisrael, then the voice of our beloved knocked at the door. It began to speak many words of wisdom. This is the voice speaking from the throat of Rabbi Yosef Karo. Afterwards he said, to me you cleave, and glory is about your heads, and there extends over you a thread of mercy. If permission had been granted for the eye to see, you would see the fire surrounding this house. If you remember, was it last week that we talked about Lag BaOmer? No, 2 weeks ago. Last week? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we talked about Lag BaOmer, and we read the last chapter of the Zohar, which describes the house of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai on the day when he's departing this world, and he imparts all the secrets of Kabbalah to his Talmidim, and they describe how the house is surrounded by fire, and they can't enter into the house, and that's the moment of Ptira. That's the moment when Rav Shimon Bar Yochai departs this world and leaves it for the next. So in the same way as this Tikkun Leil is connecting to the mystic tradition of the night of Shavuot, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai would stay up all night and learn with his Talmidim, in the same way, the voice, it tells them that their house has been, this house in which they sit, the Bet Midrash in which they sit, has become a miniature Har Sinai, a miniature Bet Midrash Shel Shimon Bar Yochai, and there is fire breaking out around the house. And they return to their studies. At midnight, the voice returned, speaking for over an hour, repeating the praises of our studies. And the voice said, "Observe how intoxicated you are with worldly desires." Intoxicated? These Mekubalim who've been staying up all night and not sleeping, they're intoxicated with worldly desires? Well, what are we? Awaken, O drunken ones, for the day comes when a man must cast away his gods of silver, worldly desires, and his gods of gold, and his lust for wealth. Go up to the land of Israel, for so you were able to do, if it were not that you were trapped in the mud of worldly desires and vanities. That's the end of their Tikkun Leil on the second night of Shavuot. They're left again with a second instruction to leave Galut behind and go to Eretz Israel, to take their Torah from Saloniki and bring it to Tzfat, to bring it to Eretz Israel. Do they do it? They do not. Shavuot finishes, the Mekubalim go back to their everyday lives. They go back to normal. And nothing happens. A year later, a plague comes to Saloniki. Many people die. Rav Yosef Karo loses his wife and children. Broken, he leaves Saloniki and moves to Nikopol, then to Constantinople. He becomes sicker and sicker. Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, hearing that his greatest friend is at death's door, leaves Saloniki and comes to Constantinople to visit him. And together they decide to fulfill the destiny placed upon them by the voice which spoke on Shavuot 3 years before. In 1536, Rav Shlomo Alkabetz goes back to Salonika to bid farewell to his Kehillah before returning to Constantinople to sail together with Rav Yosef Karo and presumably some more of this circle of friends to set sail to Eretz Israel and to fulfill the prophecy of this night. The Shabbat before he leaves Salonika, he gives a drasha, and he quotes from the Midrash. This is Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, who later in Tzfat will become the author of the Piyut Lechadodi. This is what he says in his farewell speech in Saloniki before he leaves for Eretz Israel. He brings a midrash about Rabbi Meir, who was one of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, who was a Talmid of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. כשהיה מביט רבי מאיר בתורתו, ראה שמה שחסר אדם הראשון מלבוש האור העליון. אם היות שאחר שחטא, נתקלל שיתרח בענייני הגוף, וזהו כותנות אור. He repeats a midrash about Adam HaRishon, who when he was in Gan Eden, lived an existence which was kulo or, who lived with the light of the beginning of creation, the light of Torah, which is not the hidden Torah with which we live, but the revealed Torah, the light with Torah she'ito bara istakel kudsha brichu uvara alma. The Torah which God used as the blueprint for the world. And that's the Or Rishon that the Midrash describes as existing before the beginning of the world, and which God had to put aside and hide because his creations wouldn't be able to live in the light of that revelation of his presence. So Adam HaRishon, before the Chet, is described by Rabbi Meir as living in Gan Eden, b'malbush or, clothed in that light, living in that light, living in that kind of close relationship with Kudsha Brichu. That God is mithalech began Eden, God walks around Gan Eden, he's accessible to Adam HaRishon. But what happened after the Chet? Adam says to God, I realized I was naked. And God gives Adam and Chava kutnot or. He gives them garments of skin. And the Midrash is going to explain that exchange of the garments of light for garments of skin as the transition from a world in which man lives together with God to a world in which, into Alma de Shikra, the world in which we live, the ordinary world in which everything is hidden. And the kutnot or, the garments of skin, have replaced the garments of light. And we live in a world, and those garments cover up their garments of hiding, garments which conceal, garments of concealment, which cover the truth of the real world, which hides behind the world in which we live. Aval, says Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, before he leaves Salonika, Im HaTorah, with the Torah, Yashuv HaMalbush Ruchani Kivatchila. The Torah can bring back that spiritual garment instead of not all, instead of the heavy garments of skin, kivatchila, as it was at the beginning. Umikutnot or yikare or, and the garments of skin will be called garments of light. So he's describing his departure from Galut to Eretz Yisrael as an exchange of the trappings of being trapped in the mud of worldly desires and vanities to escape into the world of Torah. And it's not surprising that the community that they built, Yosef Karo, Shlomo Alkabetz, the Rav Chaim Vital, the Ari HaKadosh, the tradition that was built up in Tzfat was a tradition of mystic revelation. And out of that tradition came the piyut of Lecha Dodi, which talks exactly about this the transition that Shlomo Alkabetz described as he left Galut behind. If we look at one of the central stanza of Lecha Dodi, which is always the moment when I feel Shabbat envelop us as a kehillah, it talks about awakening. Hit orari, But if you look, that word, hitoreri, wake up, has inside it the word or, the word skin. And lehitorer means not just to physically awaken, but to spiritually awaken, to spiritually shake yourself out of your skin, and to go instead, kiva orech, because your light has come, to envelop yourself in the garments of light, which come with Shabbat, which come with immersion in Torah learning, which come with Shavuot and Matan Torah. Kumi, Ori, arise and shine. Uri, Uri, wake up, wake up. Shir daberi, speak in song, not in words, in melody. Kvod Hashem alayich nigla. The glory of God is revealed upon you. The Shekhinah has come to join with Am Yisrael on Shabbat, which was in our tradition tells us that Shavuot, on the day of Matan Torah, was also Shabbat. So all of these come together. The sacred place, Har Sinai, the sacred time, Shabbat and Shavuot, and the sacred connection between Kudsha Brichu and Shchinte, between Hashem and Am Yisrael, in that moment of Matan Torah. And this is what we try to recreate by staying awake all night in Tikkun Leil Shavuot. This experience of inspiration in Matan Torah. And what can be more special than the privilege of being able to experience that attempt to bring ourselves to a height in Eretz Yisrael, b'makom shel Shechina. So, be'ezrat Hashem, we should manage to take something of those two Tikkunei Leil. The Tikkun Leil of Shimon Bar Yochai, the Tikkun Leil of Rav Yosef Karo and Rav Shlomo Alkabetz, who took their Tikkun Leil from Salonika to Eretz Yisrael, and we should be privileged to be able this year to actually get out of our houses and sit together, not in such big groups, but not in such small ones either, and join together in Limud Torah and in Kabbalat Matan Torah, in reliving this moment of Am Yisrael experiencing the revelation of God's Torah that moment when the sun rises on the morning of Chag HaShavuot. Okay, let's unmute everybody. I want to wish you all a Chag Sameach. And this time we haven't got the date wrong. Thank you very much for sharing this Torah with us, and enjoy the other shiurim in this 3 days of Limud Torah. Isn't it amazing how the internet has exploded with Limud Torah for Chag HaShavuot? All over the place, so many institutions, everyone's Zooming. There is so much coming in from Old Torah, from Yeshivat HaKotel, from OU. So many organizations are filling the ether with Limud Torah in the days leading up to Chag HaShavuot and Matan Torah. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all see it as a way forward and something to take with us into Shavuot itself, but also the days after, the years after, Be'ezrat Hashem, that we should use it as a way forward and upwards. Chag Sameach, everybody. So we have coming next is Bracha, and then tomorrow Shani is teaching, followed by Lisa Fredman. Lisa, very nice that you came to this share. So there's plenty out there, and take advantage, and everybody, Chag Sameach, and enjoy.
Chag Sameach, thank you very much. Bye.
Chag Sameach, Refuah Shlema, Debbie.
Thanks.